Under the Trump administration, we will defend the proud tradition of female athletes, and we will not allow men to beat up, injure, and cheat our women and our girls. From now on, women's sports will be only for women. Because with this executive order, the war on women's sports is over.
So here we go again. The sports world just got turned upside down, and Brittney Griner looks like she's one press conference away from full meltdown. Donald Trump just dropped the hammer, banning all transgender athletes from female sports nationwide. And yes, it comes right after the Caitlin Clark racial attack saga. Tell me, is anyone really surprised?
California school board votes to ban trans athletes from girls' sports amid state's lawsuit with Trump. Decision comes as President Donald Trump's DOJ sues California over policies allowing males and girls' sports. Yeah.
Do you agree with Trump's move? Or do you think this will cause more chaos in women's sports? Drop it in the comments.
I want to believe that the country is healing itself of the woke madness that invaded sports when it came to allowing males to identify as females and participate in female sports and win medals, displace females. It was absolutely outrageous, folks.
Well, folks, you could almost hear the collective gasp from ESPN headquarters all the way to the WNBA offices when this news hit. Donald J. Trump, love him or hate him, decided to blow the whistle on what he's calling one of the greatest frauds in modern sports history. And in Trump fashion, he didn't tiptoe into the pool. He cannonballed right into it.
Did you see the race where they had the best female runners and they had a guy who was a decent runner, a long distance race? And he won by 5 hours and 19 seconds. You know, normally you win by like 12 seconds, 2 seconds, a quarter of a second. He won by 5 hours and 19 seconds. It's crazy. And you know, honestly, it's demeaning for women, very demeaning. These are great athletes. It's very demeaning, and we're going to protect women. We're going to protect women. We're going to protect everybody.
And let me tell you, the ripple effect? Massive. This is not some symbolic gesture, not some half-hearted review panel nonsense. This is a straight-up executive order banning all biological males from competing in women's sports, period. No exceptions, no loopholes, no let's revisit in 6 months garbage. Done. Over. Kaput. Now, the media is already having its meltdown of the week over this. And the WNBA's reaction is about what you'd expect. Somewhere between fake outrage and wondering how this is going to affect their carefully managed narratives. And right in the middle of that, Brittney Griner.
States who are aggressively moving to prevent transgender athletes playing. Where is that going to be on your radar in terms of advocating for athletes, all athletes, transgender athletes, to be able to play?
Oh, I mean that ranks high on the list of things that I'll be fighting for and speaking up against. You know, everyone deserves the right to play. Everyone deserves the right to come here, sit in these seats, and feel safe and not feel like there's a threat or they can't be who they are or like it's just all eyes on them. So I think it's a crime, honestly, to separate someone for any reason. So I definitely will be speaking up against that legislation and those.
Yes, the same Brittney Griner who's been positioned as one of the league's outspoken social justice warriors, the face of certain progressive pushes in sports. And now, she's realizing that one of her signature stances, advocating for transgender inclusion in female leagues, just got nuked from orbit. The irony is thicker than molasses in January, folks. Because this announcement comes right after another firestorm, the Caitlin Clark racial attack controversy. Remember that mess? Clark gets targeted in a way that had fans across the country asking if the league actually values her safety, and the WNBA higher-ups gave the usual corporate shrug. Now Trump's decision is pouring gasoline on an already burning pile of public relations nightmares.
Some people want men and women's sports, and some people don't. And I was with somebody yesterday who was so upset that the bill was signed where men cannot participate in women's sports. And I said, he's a very smart guy, went to a great school, was a great student. And he actually feels, that should happen. Men should be able to play, meaning transition into women's sports. And you talk to him and it says, I don't understand it. I don't understand how the problem ever got started in the first place.
So how exactly does this connect? Simple. Trump's camp is openly saying that women like Caitlin Clark, and yes, they specifically name her in interviews, should never have to face unfair competition or dangerous situations in sports that were supposed to be for biological females. And they're using the Clark incident as Exhibit A for why female sports are turning into chaos zones. Now, you know me. I've been calling out the WNBA for years for turning a blind eye to its own self-inflicted problems. Attendance issues? Oh, that's just bad marketing. Player feuds boiling over? Oh, that's just passion. Racial tensions? Shh, don't talk about it. And now, the league is being told by the federal government that their warm and fuzzy inclusivity policies have been replaced by something a lot more rigid. Let's be real here. Brittney Griner has been one of the loudest voices pushing for the exact opposite of this. She's been in interviews talking about how trans athletes should be embraced, how the sports world should be open to everyone, regardless of biology, and how inclusion is the hill worth dying on. Well, now that hill's been bulldozed by a Trump-branded tank, and she's not exactly hiding her frustration. Sources, and when I say sources, I mean people close to the team who aren't thrilled with how this was handled, say Griner has been privately telling teammates she's beyond concerned about the future of women's sports under this new policy. Translation: she knows this isn't just a political stunt, it's the new reality, and it's not changing anytime soon. And of course, the usual suspects in sports media are rushing to frame this as an attack on trans rights, rather than what Trump's supporters are calling the protection of women's sports. You've got one side screaming discrimination, and the other side screaming common sense, and in the middle, you guessed it, Caitlin Clark's name is getting dragged back into the headlines. Why? Because Clark has unintentionally become the face of a different kind of fight in women's sports. The one where you don't just have to outscore your opponent. You have to dodge the politics, the agendas, and apparently, the physical cheap shots. The racial angle from that attack has made her story even bigger, and Trump's people are using it as a hammer to nail their point home. They're saying, if we can't even guarantee the safety of star players like Caitlin Clark, then how in the world can we claim to be fair to all female athletes when biological males are allowed to compete? Whether you agree with that logic or not, you have to admit, it's politically brilliant. Trump just tethered his policy to the most popular female athlete in America right now, someone who isn't even publicly aligned with him. Now, Brittney Griner's reaction is where it gets interesting. She's in an impossible spot. Criticize Trump's move too hard, and you risk being seen as opposing fairness for women, which is political suicide in this climate. But stay too quiet, and your own base, the same activists who've championed you, start wondering if you've abandoned the cause. From what I'm hearing, Griner has already had tense discussions with league officials about how to publicly address this. Apparently, there's a split in the WNBA locker rooms. Some players are flat out relieved by the ban, saying they never felt comfortable speaking up before because they didn't want to get labeled as bigots. Others, like Griner, are still firmly in the camp that this is a step backwards. And guess what? That division is about to get very public. The league's PR nightmare isn't just the Trump order itself. It's that now every reporter in every post-game presser is going to be asking players to pick a side. Do you support the ban or not? It's a lose-lose question for the WNBA brand. Meanwhile, the NCAA is scrambling too. If you think this stops at the pro level, you're dreaming. This order applies to all federally funded sports programs. That means college leagues are now in compliance mode, rewriting rules, and figuring out what to do with the athletes currently competing under the old gender identity policies. And trust me, the lawsuits are coming faster than a Vegas bookie at March Madness. But back to Griner, she's been vocal about inclusion partly because it aligns with her public image, but also because she's seen the WNBA lean heavily into progressive branding as a way to stand out. Now that branding is colliding headfirst with federal policy, and the league has no clue how to navigate it. You can almost picture the meeting, executives in suits, staring at each other like, so Do we follow the law and risk alienating our activist fan base? Or do we openly defy it and risk losing federal funding? Spoiler: they're going to follow the law. Money talks. And that's the other kicker. This isn't just about competition fairness. This is about dollars. If the WNBA or its teams were to openly defy the order, they could kiss goodbye to a chunk of their sponsorships, not to mention government partnerships. In a league that's still fighting for stable profitability, that's basically financial suicide. So where does Caitlin Clark fit into all this now? Well, she's not saying much publicly, smart move. But the chatter in basketball circles is that she's quietly supportive of fairness measures, even if she's not eager to wade into the politics. And that puts her in a unique position, a silent symbol for one side and a cautionary tale for the other. If you think Trump's campaign doesn't know that, you're kidding yourself. They'll milk that imagery for all it's worth. The idea of protecting America's sweetheart of basketball from unfair play. And with Clark in her second year as a pro, still pulling in massive ratings, the optics are gold. And here's where it gets even more wild. Because while Trump's executive order had the woke crowd clutching their pearls, you could see the ripple effect hitting all the way into pro sports conversations. Yes, even the WNBA drama that never takes a day off. And right in the middle of that drama, Brittney Griner. The same Brittney Griner who has been treated like the unofficial political mascot of certain media outlets, suddenly finding herself in a spot where her old talking points aren't exactly landing the same way anymore. Now, let's not pretend Brittney didn't see this coming. She's been in the spotlight long enough to know when the political winds are shifting. And shift they have. Hard. Because this isn't just a one-off policy. This is a federal-level mandate, the kind that's going to be very difficult to reverse unless someone else walks into the White House with a pen and a completely different agenda. Translation: this is here to stay for a while. Which means all those carefully crafted activist talking points? Yeah, they're about as useful as the Fever's offensive scheme when Caitlin Clark is out. And speaking of Caitlin, yes, the same Caitlin Clark who just went through a racial incident that the league would rather quietly shuffle into the "let's never bring this up again" file. You'd think, after all that mess, that maybe the WNBA would take a second to calm things down. Maybe unify players. Maybe focus on basketball instead of becoming a social experiment petri dish. Nope. Instead, they're in full panic mode, trying to figure out how to walk the line between the new federal rules and the loud minority of their player base who will scream on Instagram Live about rights being stripped, while conveniently forgetting Title IX exists for a reason. And that's where the entertainment comes in. Because Brittney Griner, for all her experience, is now having to choose her words like she's on a minefield. She can't go too hard against the ban without looking like she's against fairness for female athletes, which, let's be honest, is already the public's suspicion. But she can't exactly clap for it either without losing her activist credibility. That's the type of political limbo that makes publicists earn their paycheck. The funny part? While all this is going down, you've got certain corners of sports media acting like Trump just invented competitive fairness out of thin air, as if women haven't been talking about this for years. You've got female athletes who trained their whole lives, lost scholarships, lost podium finishes, lost entire careers because of policies that let men compete in women's categories. And now, because Trump is the one putting the stop sign down, they suddenly have to pretend the issue doesn't exist, or else risk agreeing with him. That's how broken the discourse is. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark's name keeps coming up. Not because she's in the middle of this specific policy, but because she's become the symbol of women's sports viewership power. She's the reminder that you don't need to bend the rules to draw crowds. You just need actual talent, marketable personalities, and, here's a crazy idea, competition that's fair. You think people are going to tune in to watch a 6'2" biological male dominate a bunch of undersized guards? No. They'll stop watching, just like they stopped watching certain Olympic events when fairness went out the window. And you can bet the WNBA is watching those viewership numbers like a hawk right now. They've been bragging about record audiences, record merch sales, and packed arenas every time Caitlin plays. But here's the thing. All those numbers? They don't happen if the league gets known as the one where the rules don't matter, and biology is just a suggestion. You kill the credibility, you kill the product. It's that simple. And if you think the average sports fan is going to sit there and pretend this isn't obvious, you're out of your mind. That's the nightmare scenario for someone like Brittney Griner. Because for years, she's been positioned as one of the faces of the league. And whether she likes it or not, when you're a face of the league, you become tied to its credibility. If the WNBA becomes a punchline over this issue, it doesn't just hurt the league's image. It hurts her legacy too, and she knows it. That's why you're going to see her try to thread this needle in interviews, dodging certain questions, leaning on generic, "we need to have conversations" lines, and praying that the story moves on before she has to plant her flag in public. And let's not act like this isn't also a subtle power play from Trump. He knows women's sports have been one of the most obvious examples of how woke policies can backfire in real life. It's one thing to debate bathroom bills and pronouns. It's another thing entirely to show a high school girl who lost her state championship to a guy with a 5 o'clock shadow. Those visuals don't require a political science degree to understand. Trump is seizing on that. He's tying it to fairness, safety, and even parental rights. And in the process, he's forcing every public figure in sports to either agree with the policy or explain why they're against protecting female competition. That's a lose-lose PR battle for most of them. And if you think this conversation isn't going to bleed into the WNBA's locker rooms, you haven't been paying attention. These players talk. They have group chats. They have opinions. And while some will publicly back whatever the league office says, you can bet there are plenty who quietly agree with the ban but won't say a word because they don't want to deal with the social media mob. That silence speaks louder than any tweet. All of this makes Caitlin Clark's role even more interesting, because while she's not a politician, her mere presence is political now. Every time she steps on the court, she's proof that you can grow women's sports without gimmicks, without bending the rules, and without turning every post-game presser into a culture war debate. And that's exactly why her name keeps getting dragged into these conversations, because she's the example that undercuts the entire argument for allowing biological males into women's sports. So, as Brittney Griner tries to figure out how to navigate this, and as Trump's ban starts getting enforced in more states, the big question is simple. Who's going to adapt, and who's going to burn their credibility clinging to a policy most Americans don't support? The polls are clear. The majority of people, including a lot of lifelong Democrats, don't want to see men in women's sports. That's the political reality, no matter how many hashtags get thrown around. Bottom line, this isn't going away. The lawsuits will fly, the press conferences will get awkward, and certain players will keep trying to find ways to sound like they're taking a stand without actually saying anything of substance. But every month this policy stays in place, it becomes more normal. And once it's normal, reversing it becomes politically impossible without looking like you're openly against fairness. That's the trap. And Trump just set it right in the middle of the sports world.